Hello everybody and welcome back to another War of the Visions video. Today we're continuing our Should You Pull series for the Final Fantasy Tactics 2 collaboration. Last time we talked about Mustadio and how he's a great unit to build if you pull him, and how maybe you should target him if you don't have gunners already on your team, but otherwise that it's kind of hard to go for a limited time MR. Today we're going to be talking about Agrias, and she is going to be a unit that a lot of you already know about. She's gotten a lot of attention from Japanese players, and she's used heavily in their meta, so she's definitely someone that everyone has their eye on. But we're going to go over all of her details and why she's considered to be so good, and then we'll kind of decide on whether or not she's a good option for you specifically to pull. So why the heck should you even pull Agrias? Well, she's considered to be a very powerful tank, both in magic tanking and defense. She can also deal some damage, which is not typical of a tank. So she's got a lot going for her, and we're going to take a look at how all of that is even possible by taking a look at her stats. But first, we'll just do the basic overview here. She's a UR ice unit with 3 move, 1 jump. She gets her Holy Knight job, whatever that is, as well as Paladin and Cleric, which is kind of interesting because she's going to get some magic stats from Cleric, but that's also where you get some spirit stats from. She uses swords and then your typical armor helm accessory. Taking a look at her stats right off the bat, you can see that the HP is huge. Like, that's a really solid starting HP. That's up there with Engelbert. That's really great. And then her strength is not bad at all. It's not on the level of DPS, but we're gonna have some ways to boost that as well. Her magic is non-existent, and same thing with the crit rate. Dexterity is good. It's above average, and she has high luck, and she has okay agility. Like, that's not a bad agility, but it's not a super high agility either. And she's got a very nice 6 defense and 6 spirit on base right there, which is awesome. She's also going to get a node on her ability board for 20% attack, and that's already going to get us up into the 300. When we take a look at her resistances, she's got the wind resistance, which is very nice, and then she's got fire weakness, which is interesting considering Delita is fire, and she doesn't have a lot of slash resist either, although she has 5% too, so that's okay. She's weak to pierce, and then has some resistance to magic and to striking, so the magic resistance there is a super welcome sight. It's good that she's not weak to any, like to slash or something. That would be bad. Otherwise, she's strong against paralysis and charm, and those are 2 relevant stats effects, so that's very cool. She gets an armor for a TMR, and it's got decent stats. It's got high HP, okay defense, and then good spirit. This would be a really solid piece, I think, for a lot of people, just to get a little defense stats and some extra HP. If you have a better source of defense, then depends on what you're trying to do with her, but I think this is a cool TMR. The stats are definitely fine. They're better than fine. The TMR skill is awesome. It gives Protect and Shell for 3 turns, and it's got a good TP cost, so it's going to generate some AP for you. And then her master ability increases attack resistance, and this is where she really picks up, because all of a sudden you look at her resistances and she's getting just a ton of resistance there to use against all sorts of types of units. So now we can see why she's becoming quite the tank. Looking at her support skills, we can now see why she can get a lot of attack as well, because we just had that 20% up attack from her board, and then another 30% from the first ability there. You're gonna get up to like base level Stern levels of attack, and that's excluding Stern with his support skills, his self-sacrifice, his whatever, but the point is that you can get her attack fairly high because she has these options to equip, and then you have options with your equipment and the sword that you can give her. So I can definitely see why she's able to deal higher damage than your average tank, but she also gets so many good passives here that it's really hard to pick. Her Holy Knight's protection is obviously very good if she's tanking, and then the Knight's Honor, agility and spirit is incredible, and then she gets extra spirit. If you're hunting down mages, you can get a pretty silly amount of spirit, so that's 27 from the bottom 2 skills, plus her 6 is 33 plus whatever equipment you have. You could really hunt after some mages, and I think that would be super interesting to see, and obviously getting her some agility is really solid. So I actually think that you would probably use Holy Knight's protection and Knight's Honor the most often with her, and then if you were trying to be a little more aggressive and you knew who you were going after, you would use the chivalry with one of the second or third support ability. I would say probably Knight's Honor just to get that agility as well. But you can see already how she just gets so much, like we haven't even gone into skills or counters or anything, and she already has so much going for her just from her passives, from her board, and from her stats. Moving into her counters, she gets some interesting ones. So she has Defend, which just reduces all the damage taken, which is really solid. And then Paladin's Guard is just the physical damage. And then Auto Cure is my favorite because it's pretty good. I think that it scales with magic though, so I don't know how good that's going to be on her, but it's pretty sweet with Mashery when she takes a hit and then she heals like 1500 back after taking the hit. Obviously that would be a really big deal on a tank to just heal a boatload of your HP back instead of just reducing it, but I think depending on the potency of that, you might just be using Defend with her because that's going to reduce all damage. And then her basic attack is pretty standard. Okay, looking at her main job skills, she gets quite a bit. The big ones to take a look at here is the fact that she gets all these status effects. So we've got North Swain's Strike to do Disable, Hallowed Bolt to do Silence, Judgment Blade to do Stop, and 2 of those are cross AoEs. And then she gets tanking abilities here. She gets a regen and she gets an increase in spirit with Talisman, which is crazy to go 45 spirit for 1 turn if you know you're going to get hit by something. If you are on a map, let's say, and you're moving up against Medinas and you see that you're probably going to get Cosmo Plumed, you could, if you know that map well, you could set her up to do that, which is certainly really good. The regen is awesome because it applies to other people as well. So with the on and off ability, you now have a way, they both apply to other people. So you have a way for her to stick around, although with a tank, sometimes you do want them to go straight forward. So you'll have to play around with that because those don't look like they're fun to turn off, but they look like they're great abilities. On the sub job, you're going to get another defensive buff that again is applied to your party, and then you're going to get a couple of really solid skills. So the first is Full Break, which will it looks like a tank killer because it's going to decrease attack, magic, defense, and spirit. I mean, really that's going to work on everybody, but it's going to be really, really solid to help break down an opponent's tank if you're seeing who's going to fall first. And then I Trust You is an ability that increases attack and magic when attacking male units, and I don't know if that's going to change or not for global. We've had some changes with those types of abilities, so we'll see what happens. But the Full Break here, it's a pretty expensive AP cost, but it's a really solid skill. So we have to see whether or not it's worth equipping her other sub jobs to compete with this one. Taking a look at Paladin, you're getting your classic Paladin abilities. You're getting all of your buffs, so you get your Divine Grace, which you'll turn off, your Saint Wall, your Sentinel, but you do not get your Resist Death. I keep forgetting what that's called. You won't get your that chance to survive damage, so that's one thing to note. But Sentinel is a really big deal, and on her her sword saint kit, or whatever her job is called, she doesn't have a defense buff. So this will give you the sentinel buff, which is pretty solid, as well as the saint wall for physical damage. So if you're going to be using her as a physical tank and you think that that's going to be really important in your matchups, then you're going to sub Paladin with her. But otherwise, I think especially if you're using her as a magic tank, I think you can afford to actually sub her with her other jobs, and we'll take a look at the Cleric next. So Cleric, she's going to get magic scaling skills, and this is where she's not going to be useful unless you give her Excalibur or like a magic nag or something like that, except that she does get pronged staff, which will scale with her attack. It can decrease agility, and I'm kind of curious how this works in raids, if this would actually help in a raid to help you chain, and it gives her a different attack type as well, which is pretty interesting. She also technically can chain with light with banish, which is cool, and then she could heal herself if she needed to. This seems like a really niche job though. The Calamity Guard is very interesting for certain encounters. I'm sure that would be useful in the tower. This might be super interesting to sub, but I don't think there's enough here. I feel like this is going to be just like a tech sub job for very, very specific content and not for like PvP or something. Although it is important that she has this sub job, because this is again where she gets her spirit stats from, and some of her other her passives and stuff, and her auto cure. So it is good to have, but it's kind of interesting that there's not really too much here that she would need on a regular basis. Taking a look at her special, she gets a fairly powerful special. It goes in a straight line, it has an AoE hit, but it costs 49 AP, which is super expensive, and it has a very high chance to inflict confusion. So I don't know how often she's going to get to use this, because you want her to be using other abilities. And there's actually one thing that we didn't talk about, so I'm going to have to go back here, which is the fact that she has Taunting Blade on her Paladin sub, and that is going to be another reason to run that. And it's a very expensive ability. She's going to use that Taunting Blade before she uses her Limit Burst, so if you use it's going to be hard for her to use this. I don't really see a circumstance, unless you have some mega AP gaining that you do at the very beginning of a battle, where you're going to be using this too often, and especially if you're going to do Paladin sub. And if you don't do Paladin sub, then you're going to need to equip Vow of Love on her, so that's something to consider as well. Okay, so we're going to compare her, as always, to other units. So the first comparison that we're going to make is Rain, because he is a magic tank, and we'll see how they kind of stack up. So Rain gets a bunch of spirit off the bat, more than Agrias does, but Agrias has all of her passives. Of course, Rain has passives as well, but you can just see how he might be geared to be a magic tank right off the bat. It's hard to compare them in terms of strength because they use different scales, but you can see the magic and the strength stat are not that different between them. Their HP is not that different, and their dexterity is not that different. But with Agrias, you are getting a faster unit and you're getting a higher luck. That's going to help her with evasion, although I don't know that you can build her evasion without enough supporting buffs and cards and stuff. We're also going to compare her to Engelbert, because I think she can physical tank to a certain extent. And again, you can see how she's very similar to him in a lot of ways. Just like Rain had way more spirit, Engelbert's going to have way more defense, and he's going to have passives that increases his defense, etc. But where they differ is that Agrias is basically taking a little bit from her magic resistance from Rain and putting that into slash resistance, whereas Rain doesn't have any slash resistance. You're just getting a more balanced tank, but I think in a really fair way. Like, Agrias has access to a lot, and you can see that she's not that far off in a lot of stats compared to Rain and Engelbert, but she gets more strength and she gets more ways to raise her strength. So she really does get it all. You can really see why she's considered to be so powerful. So moving on again to why, or should you even pull this unit? We already talked about Mustadio, and now we're going to talk about Agrias, and the answer is yes. Yes, you should pull for Agrias. And I think there's certain qualifiers. Of course, do you have enough Visior? Are you already really stocked on tanks? Do you have Engelbert and Rain and you've built them both? Or you have another, like whatever other tanks that you have Whisper, you have Dario, etc. Then maybe you really, really don't need her. But I just think that she brings so much to the table in terms of her attack power, her stats effects, and then her ability to tank multiple types of damage all in one battle. She might not hold out as long against a specific type as Engelbert could against physical damage, but she's going to be holding her own and striking back, and I think that's going to be really important. So I think that she's generally going to improve most accounts, which is saying a lot. And if you have the chance to get her, then by all means, you should build her. And with that said, there's only one unit left to talk about that's new for FFT2, and that is Delita. So we're going to be talking about him in my next video, so please look forward to that. And I hope that this video was useful to you. You can let me know if it was in the comments below, and we can chat about anything that I might have missed, or if you've got plans for Agrias yourself, let me know and we'll chat. So until next time. Thank you so much for watching this video. You can show your support with a like and subscribe, and by checking out my Patreon at patreon.com/MassidiaGaming. Until next time, keep it real, Massidians.